And we are live. Hi, everyone. We'll see how many of you are going to be able to make it to the first session and be able to navigate Airmeet because it's a little bit sometimes tricky. But hey, I see there's so many of you. There's a lot of thumbs up and stuff like that. Thank you so much. And I am so excited to speak to our very first speaker. And this is Heather. And I am so grateful, Heather, for you taking the time because I know I reached out to you. I'm like, hey, would you be able to share your expertise with everyone here? And you're like, yes, absolutely. So thank you so much for taking the time. And Heather is with a company called HubSpot, and Heather's going to talk about how to scale your customer success department.
Thank you so much, Natalia, for the lovely introduction. Honestly, an absolute pleasure to be here with you all today. Please do feel free to use the chat and use the Q&A. I'd love to make this as interactive as possible. So yeah, and when Natalia reached out to me and we were trying to figure out what we would talk about, I suggested that maybe we talk about how to scale your customer success department. So I just put together a couple of slides here. So obviously this is a topic that literally you can spend most of your career trying to figure it out. So I can't promise to be able to solve every problem in the space of 30 minutes, but hopefully what you can walk away from this session is with maybe a new idea that you hadn't thought about before or a new perspective on something that you're currently doing. Um, a little bit about me in terms of why am I here, why am I talking to you guys. I've been working with customers since I was 14, which I can tell you is quite a long time ago now. I've been working in customer success for over 8 years. I'm one of these OG people that was actually an account manager that wasn't an account manager that became a customer success manager. So I've been usually passionate about this area for a very long time. I worked both in North America and in Europe, so really seen a quite wide range of the kind of global nuances that exist. And I've worked across a really wide variety of companies and customers, so everything from enterprise Fortune 500 companies to small to medium businesses. And then personally, myself and the companies I've worked with worked from startups, scale ups, and then high growth organizations. So really seeing customer success from a variety of different lens, which has really helped me create a very holistic view of it. I'm very passionate about helping people unlock their potential. That's why I got into customer success. I always say the clue is in the name. You've got to like people and you've got to like results if you're working in customer success. And just a fun fact, maybe something you don't know about me, I'm a philosophizing powerlifter. So I'm currently studying part time for a degree in philosophy and psychology. Again, tells you my fascination with people, and I'm an avid powerlifter in my spare time as well. So the challenge statement, like I said, was how to scale your customer success department. And I want to offer kind of three potential solutions to how you might go about this. Um, I'm really focusing in here on people, process, and your tech stack. So starting off with people, one of the big things that I've learned in my experience is the importance of hiring for competencies rather than necessarily just hiring for roles. So whether you're working with a startup, a scale up, or a more established organization, it's very likely in the nature of customer success that the nature of that job is going to change. Who here has maybe had renewals under them and then hasn't had renewals, who's maybe had to manage some customer support and then didn't. We know that as an industry, customer success is ever evolving. So focusing on the competencies allows you to hire people because of the skill sets that they have rather than the titles. And then that allows you a little bit more flexibility if that customer success role within your department or within your organization changes. It gives you some space to flex that person. So, for example, I often found things like ambiguity, the ability to deal with change, adaptability, they're really important characteristics in a customer success manager over and above them having had X amount of experience with that title in the past. A big thing I've also found in my career is that specialists are often multipliers. So we've seen, and this has been amazing, the evolution of customer success. It's not just customer success managers. We're having a whole kind of supporting cohort that's now a part of our org. So CS enablement, CS ops, customer education, customer marketing. These are really critical support functions to a CS. We're talking about people, but how what people and who are driving the different pieces of it really matter. So in the organizations I've been in, I've really seen that people coming in with maybe very specialist knowledge around CS ops or CS enablement really amplify your CS efforts within your organization. So it's really a call to action to not continue to hire more of the same. Like if you're constantly in that recruitment drive and you're just adding more and more headcount and more CSMs, it's sometimes stop and thinking, is that actually the multiplier that you need in your organization right now? Is there a conversation around CS ops, CS enablement, team leads, program leads? I think it's really a critical piece to kind of unlock scale within your CS org. The next big thing I'm very passionate about is process. So really thinking when you're designing your playbooks to scale. And like that's the excellent thing. If we do a really good job, then you should find yourself kind of nearly really busy 6 to 12 months down the line because you've done such a great job of growing your customers, retaining your customers, and coming up with innovative ways to engage them and to delight them. But it's really important early on to establish, if I wasn't here, could someone else run that playbook on my behalf? And also, are we setting things up that we're not relying on one human to support that particular task or function? So a really great example of this is often, CS will take on a lot of the customer training or customer education piece, and they often do that on one-to-one. Webinars, on-demand content, they're really an excellent way to achieve the same goal, but in a more scalable fashion. And we've seen over the last 18 months that's become more important than ever. We haven't been sitting in offices with each other, we haven't been having on site visits with clients. That ability to scale, to work asynchronously, is more important now than it ever has been. And we all know that that working model is here to stay, right? We're going to be hybrid now moving forward. So scale, documentation, process, playbooks, so important. I think as customer people, we're often great at like really knowing the nuances of relationships, but we keep like a lot of this information in our head, and it's really important that we processize it, document it, and make sure we're setting it up to scale. I always think a really good CS department is when you leave, that department can still stand up by itself, right? That you've put so many supporting playbooks and scale processes in there that essentially you're essentially not needed. That's really when you know you're kind of succeeding at this. The other call to action here is invest in training. So I touched on it there, the importance of customer education, and this is really talking about training both internally and externally. So externally to our customers, like it's really important for product adoption that they know how to use the particular software or services that you have. And the only way to ensure that is to make sure that we're training them. Again, we often see in early stage CS that that's something that a CS team will take on directly. And as maybe your business becomes more established, you may find that different departments might spin off, like customer education or customer enablement or customer marketing. And I currently work at HubSpot, and I think they do that very, very well here. We have an excellence academy, we have a community. So we have lots of ways, and we have lots of webinar series. So we have lots of ways for customers to train, and to train themselves and empower themselves in the tool. I think that's really important for your scaling your CS department as well, because what that allows you to do is have a lot more meaningful, strategic, grow orientated conversations with your customers. Because when they know, like, instead of teaching them like how to, you're talking about what are you going to do kind of questions. So that's really when you can elevate your CS org to a different level, when you're having those more strategic conversations. That training piece though also applies internally. So I think again, the pandemic really kind of brought it to bear that, how you train and onboard your new employees is so important. And having like a really set process, that people can come on no matter where in the world they are, and train into into your CS organization is really critical. Because it all starts with people. When you think about CS, if they don't know how to do their job well, how can they teach a customer to use your product or service well? So really from early on, you're really creating that very tight recruiting to hiring to training process with your CS department. And these trainings coming in are about these competencies that you saw in them to hire them, but really focusing on how you want them to show up within your organization. Using frameworks, using like lots of like accounting for all of the different learning styles as well. So what I've seen work really well is a blend of self-paced and instructor-led training. And again, as much asynchronous communication you can do, that you're not putting this training on one individual. So if anyone's sitting there and you are customer success, leadership in your organization, it's really important. You're making videos, you're making on-demand courses, that you can scale your time as well. So the process piece is really around the importance of putting process and playbooks in place for your department, and really having that future vision to think, is this going to stand up when we're at 40 customers, 400 customers, 4,000 customers? And then the other call to action here is about investing in training, both internally for your CS org and also externally for your customers. My last potential solution here is around tech stack. So I think it's really important to invest in software early. I think this is something that I probably learned the hard way in my career. I think in CS we're a little bit guilty of, using a lot of Google Sheets and Excel sheets. Maybe you're using a CRM. If you are, like, maybe it's just a CRM, maybe it's not necessarily integrated with what your sales or your marketing team are using. Maybe you have MPS software, but maybe you don't have anything that's sending like alerts. So the more tech tools that you can put in at the start of your CS journey is really going to help your department scale. So rather than relying on your CSMs to find problems, your software should be picking up these problems, and flagging it to them. And all of a sudden, that's a very different motion, right? Like, you're turning your people in to be able to be proactive. So for example, like, a really easy one, no matter the size, is something like NPS. Having an NPS score, it automatically goes out. You get a bad score, a CSM can follow up and understand why. So all of a sudden, you're placing your CSMs in a position to be proactive. I've often seen that it's just, you get a lot of resistance maybe from like leadership in terms of investing in this, but honestly, it's as important sometimes as trying to get extra headcount. And in fact, investing in a really, good, whether it's a Gainsight or Churn Zero or any of these kind of programs, or whether it's just, maybe having a CRM rather than an Excel sheet, it will definitely serve your business well as you scale. And that really plays into my second point around the ROI. So to have a seat at the table, CS needs to prove its value. We're still a relatively newer organization than things like sales and marketing. So really sitting in front of your CEO and your C-suite, that they understand the importance of the work that you're doing, and that there's clear ROI and clear impact back to the business, is really so critical. Um, if you don't have that tech stack, that's going to be really difficult, because while it's great to have that anecdotal evidence, while it's great to have that narrative, it's great to have customer stories, it's great to have people celebrating wins within your team. Really, a business is going to be driven by data driven decisions. So you need to be tying that back to your retention score or your revenue retention metrics, the product adoption scores you have, whatever it is, to really show the impact of your work and your organization's work. So my third potential solution, to recap, is, invest in a tech stack. And start where you're at. I understand if you're a smaller business, you're not necessarily going to go from an Excel sheet to, a 25,000 euro investment or $25,000 investment. But what's one small tech stack, progress you can make? Is it an NPS score? Is it a basic CRM? And this piece is really critical for scale. Without it, you're going to have your team doing lots of manual, repetitive tasks that take away their time from doing the really impactful work. And customer success is all about impact, right? Everyone on your team should be an impact junkie. That's what customer success is all about. And that tech stack will also allow you to showcase your ROI. So it's not enough to do good work in customer success. We are still a new department. And if we want to have a seat at the C-suite table, we need to be showing our businesses the importance of the work that we're doing. That's really, I think, accepting that piece has made it easier in my career. I think for me, then, these three solutions are all underpinned by these kind of very kind of, I guess, general sentiments I would have around scaling a CS department. And at the core, I've put employee and customer centric. Like, people do business with people, but also in customer success, you have people looking after people. If your people are not in a good headspace, we're hearing coming out of the pandemic, there's so much talk about burnout, the whole wave of the great resignation, people being unhappy when like their companies are forcing them back to the office and that's not what they want. If your company is not fundamentally caring about its employees and its customers, it's very hard for a customer success department to flourish. It certainly might have some people in there with that title, but it's going to be very much owned by that department and not felt across the organization. So ensuring that you're in a culture where your employees are really valued, if you look after your people, they're going to look after your customers. And that's a really critical piece. And I think for me, I've always been very involved in culture and people initiatives within the organizations that I've worked with, for this very reason. The more motivated and positive mindset and great work environment that I can create for the people on my team, the better work that they do. And all of the research supports that as well. The customer centricity, it's solved for the customer. The customer is at the heart of what you do. And the golden pyramid in customer success is customer, company, team, individual, right? Like that is always the pyramid that you're working off. And it's really important that you have buy-in from your organization on that. I think without that middle piece, some of the rest that we talk about, it's very hard to scale it, because we talked about tech stack. If your company isn't really putting customers at the core, then often getting budget to do these things can be very difficult. So it's really trying to create that environment within your orgs, that inner core circle of being very employee and customer centric. On the left, then, I have vision and strategy. I don't know about any of you guys, but I have often been very guilty of working in my business and not on my business. So very, very easy to be busy as a customer success person. There's always another email, there's always another call, there's always another meeting. There's never, and it's such an exciting industry and organization. There's so much to do. There's so many ways you can do it. But if you're not taking the time to actually do planning work, and to create like strategic vision for your organization, you're going to get very stuck being busy and not really making very meaningful steps forward. So when I've done this, whether it's OKR setting, whether it's creating like a customer roadmap with specific pillars and then action points as a result of this, whether it's quarterly offsites with your leadership, whether it's kind of strategic planning season where you have different compass priorities for the following year, really making sure that you hone in on your vision and your strategy is really going to be very important. And what this also helps you articulate within your organizations is where you're not going to play. So, as I said, there's so many ways to do customer success, there's so many ways to bring it, and it's often so dependent on the stage of your company and the product that you're working on. Sometimes you need to tell your business, yeah, I understand why that could be a positive thing to do, but we're not going to do it right now because it's not a priority, because of this data that I'm showing you. Doing this is actually going to move the needle on our org a lot more. So definitely a lesson that I learned the hard way, that it's really easy to be busy, but you've got to work on your business, not just in your business. And that's really going to elevate your success to a totally different level. And last thing on my end, with always iterate. So I think, again, I don't know about anybody here, but I've definitely put like so much of my heart and soul into building a CS department. That sometimes things can kind of become your baby, or like how much work that went into get the investment in that tech stack initially, or how much convincing or influence it took to get that first hire, or you remember when you were the only person doing that job, and like now there's 40. But it's really important to really separate your ego and that personalization from it, and remember, like, always iterate. And actually, when you reframe it in that, like, kind of frame of mind, it's actually really exciting, right? Because there's always a new way to do things, this radical curiosity, where you're always thinking about, how can I do that differently? How can I do that better? And I think I learned that it's not to say that you're doing it wrong right now, but it's just that customer success is such an evolving field. And if you're working in a scaling company, the company is evolving as well. It really makes a lot of sense that your processes and your headcount and who you're hiring, all of this stuff evolves alongside of that. So I think that's definitely something that I've learned over the last 18 months in particular, is the importance of always iterate, and really like trying to separate my ego out from like the work that I've been doing. So, to recap, our challenge statement was how to scale your customer success department. I'm putting forward three potential solutions of areas of focus. So, your people, your processes, and your tech stack. And I'm saying that all of this really sits upon your foundation of customer employee centricity, your vision and strategy, and this concept of always iterate. Um, so that is, thank you so much, everyone, for your attention. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and see if maybe there are any questions in the Q&A. Oh, and there we have Natalie back.
Yes, I am back. Hey, we do have a few people commenting here. And the first one was Tim. And Tim was saying, you say invest in training. How do you frame the request for the budget? Is there a number of staff or a number of customers that you use as a rule to get the commitment from the company?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think, in CS is certainly a skill you need to learn in terms of like how to influence leadership to get headcount, or different dollars. I think the way I've done it in the past is really showcasing, like, often without that job is falling to a CS person. And if you can show the data that that is taking that person X amount of time, and in fact, often when you run the numbers, maybe there's not even enough hours in the week or the month for them to get to all these customers to do this. Um, I think that's been very powerful. So, like, really leaning into your data and like showing how many customers would benefit from somebody like that. The other angle I've often taken on this is more inspirational, right? Like, I think it's very exciting for a CEO to think of like triple digit people on a webinar learning about something, particularly if you're including them maybe in a thought leadership piece as well. So I think if you can also lean into, is there an inspirational or a thought leadership angle, like, often that's also enough to get like your senior leadership excited about something like that. So I guess I'm saying there, like, look to see, look at your data. Can you build a case from your data? And then secondly, what would get your senior leadership excited? Like, is there something there around thought leadership that would really kind of get them excited as well?
Awesome. We have another question from um, Hake. And Hake is asking, where is the future of CS going? What are some of the best ways to engage with customers on a larger scale?
Yeah, I think like community-based initiatives are like going to be really important for connecting with a lot of customers. And also when you think about it, it doesn't rely on you or your organization to always be there. It's creating like a community among people as well. So we've definitely at HubSpot seen like our community forums be very, very popular. And often customers will go in there and answer customers or answer questions from other customers. And then we'd obviously have quite a large partner ecosystem as well. So a lot of partners would really go in there to kind of make a name for themselves as well. So I think if you're thinking about how do I connect with a lot of customers, I think things like community is really, really powerful. Because, like I said, it's not relying just on you and your organization for effort. Your partners and your customers, or your customer advocates are definitely pitching in as well. The other thing I would say, and I know it's not super sexy, but like webinars are still like very popular and very impactful. And I think, you can be really intentional about the webinars that you design. I was mentioning earlier about like thought leadership webinars. I remember coming into the first throes of COVID. I was working with a company who did online ordering software, and you had all of these restaurants, yeah, were shut down, and all of a sudden didn't have any business. And, we were running a webinar to help them understand how they pivoted their business online. So I think webinars are still a very powerful tool, and you can even bring that one step further and make them into workshops and small group coaching. So I've also ran a lot of workshops. So a workshop is different than a webinar in that there's maybe activities in it. So it's nearly like an interactive, if any of us remember back to our tutorials from college or school. It's more of an interactive session. And again, I talked in training that people have different learning styles. Um, so as I'm talking about connecting with a large group of people, it's really important to remember that. Like knowledge base is great. It helps some people self-serve. Some people won't search no matter what you do. So having a community is another option. Having a webinar or workshop is good for people like me who need to have a deadline in their calendar. Or then you have like self-paced. So I think a really good learning strategy, you have to incorporate the different learning styles. Again, I understand like not everyone's business is at the stage where you can do them all at once. So this is where I'm talking about your vision and strategy and understanding where do you start, where do you play first, and where do you then continue to evolve into. Hope that answers. Thank.
Yep, absolutely. Taylor is asking, what are some common mistakes you see customer departments make when scaling?
Yeah, I think hiring the wrong people. And I think that's why I put that first. And by the wrong people, I mentioned it there. Like it's very easy to just continue to add headcount. But it's really can just bring your department to a different level if you bring in these, like I said, these specialists or multipliers. Um, so if you're bringing in somebody that, like, again, often you'll see, maybe if it's a scaling company, it's somebody who's grew with the organization, and like that's fantastic, and you want to keep that talent in there as well. It's also nice to maybe get somebody in from like that has experience and seen this done in different ways as well. Or like I was mentioning, I think enablement and ops. So I think just continuing to hire the same profile, I think that's the biggest mistake that I've seen like a lot of people do. There's going to be a stage that, like I said, maybe you started with a customer support, customer success hybrid, you grow out of that. So then that profile of person changes. Maybe you grow out of that again, and now you need an enterprise CSM. Then you grow out of that, and you need a program lead or you need an enablement person. So yeah, I think a lot of people hire the wrong people.
We have time for maybe one or two more questions. Let's see. How should we structure an internal training program for CSO customer support people?
Yeah, I mean, you could tackle this, I guess, like logistically and how you could set this up, and then I guess you also have to think about what like the content you'd want to be covering. So the best training programs I've seen, like as I mentioned, it needs to kind of hit on the combination of learning styles. So you're looking for a combination of self-paced resources that people can go through by themselves. So your company wiki, Loom or Vidyard videos, maybe you have on-demand video content. You need some instructor-led sessions. People need to ask questions. It's more interactive. If they're newer to your org, they want to get to know people. And then activity based. So some people learn by doing. So consuming information won't put that in their head. Um, so role plays, different activities that they need to do, like they're all super important. For example, like you give them a task, they need to go away and do the task and like create a report for you on it. So structurally, again, you really need to be intentional to consider the different learning styles. the content, I think it's really important. Like I said, if you're hiring on the competencies, then through that training, you're really focusing in. So, for example, if your business is working with a lot of enterprise customers, then stakeholder management is going to be a massive thing for your CSMs. So, as well as just teaching them like your tool and your product and your processes, you really need to be teaching them about these competencies. Like, what do they do when they can only get their day-to-day POC on the phone, not the actual exec sponsor or the person that makes a decision? So really starting to get them think like that. Also as well, like whatever kind of frameworks or like different models that you're using, whether it's how to give feedback, a consultancy framework, we use Sandler methodology, like making sure that you're training them in on your ethos or your methods, as well as, again, like I said, purely just the processes or the playbooks. So yeah, to me, that's the combination of a good CS program. Is it has to account for all of the different learning styles. And then the second thing I'm saying is, don't just teach them how to do the job, teach them how to be really great at their job.
Love it. And we're right at our time right now. Heather, thank you so much for taking the time and spending it with us here. We do have one more question that we don't have time for right now. But Heather, if you have a couple of minutes, join the next session and I'm going to pose the question in the chat for the next session. And if you can, just go ahead and answer this question. But hey,
Amazing.
thank you so much. It was
Thanks,
amazing to
everyone.
have you. Thanks.
Take care.
Everyone, I'll see you in the next session.